In recent snowmobile history, there have been a number of milestone sleds, and one of those machines was Yamaha's RX-1, the first performance four-stroke to hit the market. Now looking back, it did have a few shortcomings, but with it, Yamaha proved that a four-stroke could be much more than a simple, lazy, slow touring sled. That was 2003. 15 years on, and the DNA of the RX-1 is still with us. When the RX-1 hit the snow, it was the same year the Rev was available to the general riding public. We all know how the Rev changed the way we rode snowmobiles, moving us away from the relaxed, stretched out position to a much more rider-forward design that has continued to be refined even on current models. It didn't take long for Yamaha to make attempts to move the riding position of the RX-1 forward as much as they could with seats and bars, but they were limited with what they could do with the mechanical dimensions of the chassis. Even when the Apex was introduced, the new bodywork helped with the riding position, but there were still challenges with the mechanical layout. You can still see that history today. The side profile of the Apex has the same basic layout as the RX-1, but that doesn't mean it was wrong. The Yamaha RX-1 and then the Apex was simply an older style layout that worked for years as the preferred riding position. And even today, there's plenty of riders who appreciate the more stretched out layout of the Apex. The fact is, you can still hustle pretty good on an Apex. You just have to ride it with a hang your ham attitude, meaning you slide half your butt off the side of the seat to weight the inside of the tunnel. The more rider-forward designs have you leaning your upper body forward towards the spindle to weight the sled properly. In fact, a lot of people prefer this stretched out layout design for long distance touring, and that's the niche the Apex fits into. It's exceptionally good at big trails with long sweeping corners. Not so good at the tight, twisty stuff. So if your destinations take you to the big trails, you can't get much better than an Apex. And then you got that four-cylinder sound to listen to. Back in the day, these machines had that throaty street bike type of sound that was a huge appeal of the RX-1. This sound alone sold countless of these machines, and I personally believe without this type of performance sound, the RX-1s wouldn't have been as popular as they were. The Apex still has that sound, but maybe it's the way my memory works. It could be exactly the same, but I think the old RX-1 sounded better. But regardless, 2018 is the end of that signature sound. At least these sleds will be heard on the trails for a long time yet, reminding those of us who were around when the first RX-1s hit the trails and how that sound paved the way for the 200+ four-strokes of today. Understanding where the Apex fits is an important part of figuring out whether or not the Apex works for your riding style and where you ride. If it is, the Apex is an excellent sled to ride, and that's partly due to the good genes, but also a continued refinement of the sled by Yamaha. Features like power steering and chassis dampeners have simply made this sled better. Even this year, the last year in its production, Yamaha continues development with additions like Yamaha's Reactive suspension system, which hydraulically connects the two front shock absorbers through an adjustable control unit. Think of it as an adjustable hydraulic sway bar. When the outside ski starts to compress because of the lateral body roll putting pressure on the outside shock, it transfers that energy to the inside shock, essentially retracting it, countering the body roll and inside ski lift. You could accomplish the same thing with a stiffer sway bar, but with stiff sway bars comes harsh ride when one ski hits a bump. Controlling the sway bar effect hydraulically means this coupling can be tuned and managed to provide the roll stiffness needed for sweeping corners, but compliant enough to absorb the trail. I'm no fortune teller, but my crystal ball is telling me that this system is going to see use in the Yamaha lineup beyond the end of the Apex. While the front suspension is still largely RX-1 influenced, the rear suspension has seen some major changes over the years, with model year 18 sleds back with the 129 single-shot rear suspension. It features a single Fox Float 3 piggyback shock carrying the entire weight of the rear. While this system saves weight, about 10 pounds over the old monoshock system, it's a bit of a debate as to whether or not it's an improvement despite the 10-pound weight savings. Last on my list of features is the 50th anniversary graphics package gracing the side of the Apex. Perhaps trying to save the best to last, Yamaha seems determined to send the Apex into history on a high note. I for one believe they did, because if you have to own an Apex, this is the Apex to own. If not now, then in 20 years, because this sled is going to be one of the classics. You don't have to be a Yamaha fan to recognize the impact the RX-1 and now ending with the 50th anniversary Apex have had on the snowmobiling world. Because if we didn't have sleds like these, we wouldn't have sleds like these.